Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I will be ranking every single book that I read in the past month, so in March, from best to worst. I read quite a lot of books this month, because it wasn't a very busy month for us, besides for like the last week of the month. I was also uploading a lot of videos in March. But anyway, here are all the books that I read in March. You'll never guess what was first on my list. The War of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien, my favorite author. If you've watched my channel for a while, then you already know what the history of Middle-earth is, but I'll explain it again just in case there's any new people watching this. So after Tolkien passed away, his son Christopher found a huge bunch of papers and manuscripts in his father's office, and he edited them, and published them, and that became, like the Silmarillion, the Children of Húrin, Unfinished Tales, and a ton of others. So, like, most of the books that Tolkien actually wrote were published after his lifetime, which is kind of interesting. And then, Christopher Tolkien devoted himself for, like, 15 years into making a 12-volume History of Middle-earth series. Now, this is the history of how his father, J.R.R. Tolkien, created Middle-earth. So it has, tons of earlier drafts of the Silmarillion and the Lord of the Rings, so like volumes 1 through 5 of the History of Middle-earth have earlier drafts of the Silmarillion, and volumes 6 through 9 have earlier drafts of Lord of the Rings, and I believe 10 through 12 has some more Silmarillion stuff as well. So yes, and this is number 8, the War of the Ring. So, and Christopher Tolkien also provides in-depth commentary and analysis and notes and footnotes alongside it, and in the book you can tell which is Christopher's notes and which is like the earlier drafts. So like here's an outline from Minas Tirith, and what Tolkien wrote is in larger print, and Christopher Tolkien's notes are in smaller print, which is really helpful. This History of Middle-earth book is about the history of how Tolkien wrote. The chapter about in the middle of the Two Towers, so the second book in Lord of the Rings, it goes from Helm's Deep to the Black Gate opens, so from the middle of the Two Towers to the middle of the Return of the King. This book, like all the others, I thought was fantastic. I learned a lot from it, and now, like, every time I read The Lord of the Rings, I can say, like, I know how Tolkien came up with this. I know the earlier forms of this name. I know, like when I'm rereading Lord of the Rings, I can think, oh, this is the one chapter that Tolkien wrote in one sitting, and like this is the one that took such a long time to write because of small detail, and this is the part that he struggled with so much. So really fascinating book, really enjoyed it, 10 out of 10. I would definitely recommend the History of Middle-earth series, but you'll have to be very familiar with Tolkien to read the History of Middle-earth series. And if you're not as familiar with, like, the Silmarillion, and the Children of Húrin and all that, then I could actually see someone diving into, like, volumes 6 through 9 first. If you're a fan of Lord of the Rings, but not as well versed in the Silmarillion, volumes 6 through 9 you could read first if you really want to. And the dust jacket is slipping out. I think I mentioned this in my other video where I ranked every book that I read in February, that the dust jackets on these editions slip out so easily. Like, you have to grip the book really hard, and if you don't, the dust jacket just starts slipping out. But I started taking the dust jacket off when I read the book, which I have found to be very helpful so far. But anyway, so The War of the Ring, 10 out of 10. I would definitely recommend it, and I'm looking forward into diving into the next volume, which is called Sauron Defeated. The next book on this list is also a Tolkien one. It is Beowulf, whatever. I think it's Beowulf. So Tolkien actually translated Beowulf and from Old English into Modern English, and Beowulf and an Old Norse saga called Legend of Sigurd and Gudrun was like Tolkien's top 2 absolute favorite works of literature, and he translated both of them. So this is Tolkien's own translation of Beowulf, and it also has a commentary by J.R.R. Tolkien. So if you didn't know, Tolkien was a professor. He taught medieval history, medieval legends, and Old English at Oxford University. And he did a lecture on Beowulf sometime in the 1920s or 1930s, I believe. And so Christopher Tolkien, this is another one of those published after J.R.R.'s death, but so the commentary in this book on Beowulf is by Tolkien, and Christopher Tolkien takes it from his father's lecture notes, and then he turns that into book form. So it's like you're being lectured by Tolkien himself, that you're in his class, even though obviously you're not. But when I was reading Tolkien's commentary, I could just imagine his voice talking in it. So this was a really fascinating book. I really enjoyed it. I'm sure you've heard a lot about Beowulf, of course, the Dragon Slayer. And yeah, this was a very great book. And again, with The Legend of Sigurd and Gudrun, and also with this book, I noticed a ton of similarities between it and Tolkien's Middle-earth works, which just goes to show that Tolkien was very inspired by these, his favorite works of literature of all time. So, like, there's some guy called Froda, or it might be the name of a place, I can't remember. There's someone called Eomer, there's the King of the Golden Hall, and one line says, "Far over the misty moorlands cold," which sounds an awful lot like "Far over the misty mountains cold." So this was a very great book. I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it. And I learned a lot from it. I would definitely recommend it. 9.5 out of 10. Definitely. The next book is actually a biography about Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. It is called Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, The Gift of Friendship by Colin Duriez. I'm really sorry. I'm probably butchering that pronunciation. I'm not pronouncing that right, probably. This is a biography about Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, their works, their friendship, and how they influenced each other. And I found this to be really helpful and informative. This was a great book. And one thing I learned was that C.S. Lewis always called Tolkien by his nickname Tollers, or by his middle name Ronald, one of his middle names. He actually had 2 middle names. So C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien, they met each other almost daily. And C.S. Lewis did not know his best friend's first name until 30 years after they met, which is really fascinating and kind of hilarious. I did not know that. I learned a lot from this book. Although I feel like there were some areas in their friendship that I feel like the author could have dived more into that he didn't, but I'm not going to let that bother me that much because it was really a great book. And I would recommend it if you want to learn more about Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. But I did actually notice a mistake in this book, so like, from reading the History of Middle-earth books, so it says in here that when Tolkien was writing The Lord of the Rings, Bilbo's original name was Bingo, but then he changed it to Bilbo. That's actually an error, a mistake, because from reading the History of Middle-earth series, anyone who's read the History of Middle-earth series knows that Bilbo's name was never Bingo. Bingo was actually Frodo's original name, not Bilbo's. So be warned, there is a mistake in here, or it just might be this edition. I don't know, but there could be a mistake in that, so be warned of that. But other than that, it was a fantastic book. I really learned a lot from it. Next book on this list, I did do a full review of it, so I'll leave a link to that in the description down below if you want to hear my full thoughts on it. So I'll just summarize it briefly here. It is Crispin, the Cross of Lead by Avi. And I believe I said this in my review, but I found out that Avi is not the author's actual name. It's just a pen name. I'm not sure what the author's real name is. But Crispin takes place in medieval England, and it's about a 13-year-old boy called Crispin. Both his parents died, and he's accused of a crime that he did not do, and anyone can kill him on sight, and they'll get a huge reward. So Crispin has to flee from his village. All in all, to put this shortly, I have a full review on it, so if you want to hear my full thoughts, there's the link in the description down below, but this was a great book. I really enjoyed it. It's a pretty short book, too, the chapters are really short, and the print is pretty big, and there's big spacing as well. So it's not as long as it looks, and I think you will really enjoy this. 9 out of 10, I would definitely recommend it. I also reviewed this book recently, so also if you want to hear my full thoughts on it, I'll leave a link in the description to that review. It is The Time Machine by H.G. Wells, and this is the book that first started the concept of, time traveling, I believe, or at least time traveling with, a machine. It's a pretty short book. It's only 115 pages. Pretty old book, too. It was written in 1895. 1890s. I think 1895. But it starts in the late 19th century, so, around the time that this book was actually written. And there's a man called the Time Traveler, and it is written in the first person. Now, we never get to hear his actual first name. He's always just referred to as the Time Traveler. But he builds a time machine and goes into the year 800,701 AD and has to survive a week there and encounters many strange things there. To put it simply, I thought this book was pretty good, not like the greatest book ever written, but a really, really good book. I'll give it an 8 out of 10. So I'm not going to say too much about it because I did already review it. But okay, I just want to say something. And this is a spoiler, so if you haven't read this book and you don't want to be spoiled, then you can skip to this time in the video. But at the ending, when the Time Traveler, he comes back from the year 800,701, but then he builds the time machine, and he disappears, and he never comes back, and we don't know what happens to him, and I want to know what happens to him. I want to know if he went into the past, or if he went into the future, just not as far away into the future as he did. But I want to know what his real name is so badly. I want to know where he went, if it was the past or the future, and why he didn't come back. I want to know so badly, but I never will. So, The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. The ending left me feeling satisfying, but also unsatisfied in a way. But I would definitely recommend it. And it's pretty short. So if you do end up not liking it, then it's not like you would have wasted a lot of time reading it, since it is only 115 pages, but I would still recommend it. The next book on this list, I do not actually own the physical book because, well, first I borrowed it from the library, but then it got overdue, so I had to return it. And then I borrowed the ebook, but it got overdue, so I had to return it. And then I finished off the last 10 chapters with the audiobook, and then returned that. But it is Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. This is the third book in the Stormlight Archive, and it's very long. It's like 1,400 pages, I think. And I did not enjoy this one as much as the first two Stormlight books, definitely. I thought the first two Stormlight books were really good. Not great, but I thought they were really, really good. But this one, I don't have anything against long books, it's 1,400 pages, but I don't have anything against that. I don't really have anything against long books. But it sort of felt like Brandon Sanderson was trying to make these books long on purpose, because the first half of this book went by really, really slowly. It was sort of a slog to get through, and it wasn't a chore. I did still enjoy it. The second half was pretty good. But I feel like the first half especially was just so slow-paced, and it kind of felt like Sanderson was just trying to make this book long on purpose for some reason. But it was still a good book, I would say. I do want to continue on with the rest of the series, so I'll probably do that, and the second half was pretty good. But I also feel like in this book, the quality of the prose and dialogue is sort of decreasing. Like, it's not near as good as in the first two books, and it just kind of feels like Sanderson, I don't know. It feels like Sanderson is trying to make these books long on purpose, I've already said that. It was still a good book, it was still an okay book, just definitely not as good as the first two Stormlight books, and it took me such a long time to get through it, especially that first half. I would say it was still a good book, though. I do want to continue on with the series, but I don't feel as motivated to read the rest of the series now. The next book is The King of the Trees by William D. Burt. This is the first book in a 5-book series, I believe. And this is sort of like fantasy, and I don't know what to say about it without giving, too much away, so I'll just read the description on the back, which is a good enough description, certainly better than anything I could give. What do an old wooden box, a jeweled pendant, and some mysterious green-garbed strangers have in common? When Roland, son of Ganon, sets out to solve this puzzle, he embarks on an adventure that will take him worlds beyond the walls of his little log cabin. In the end, the success or failure of his quest will determine not only his own fate, but also that of people everywhere. And this is sort of like fantasy, but it also has some allegorical elements, like some stuff pointing towards, Christ Jesus' death. And the first half of this book I really enjoyed, but I don't know. It wasn't for me. I usually like fantasy adventure books like this, but this just wasn't for me. And the allegorical elements that were in it sort of felt like they were just thrown in with the story. I mean, sure, I guess they still had to do with the plot, but, they were very much just thrown in there just for allegory's sake. At least to me it felt like. I would probably still recommend it, but I'll give it a 7 out of 10. I think there are a lot of people who would really enjoy this book. It just wasn't for me, unfortunately. Next book, I also do not own the physical copy. It is another Brandon Sanderson book. Let me see, where is it? Here. Oh, the image is all fuzzy. But I'll have to do, I guess. It's a little fuzzy. But it is Dawnshard. This is book 3.5 in the Stormlight Archive, so this takes place in between books 2 and 3. No, in between books 3 and 4 of the Stormlight Archive. And the quality of the Stormlight Archive series is really decreasing. And don't get me wrong, again, as with Oathbringer, this was still an okay book, and it was definitely way more fast-paced than Oathbringer was. But again, as with the novella that took place in between books 2 and 3, I feel like this didn't really add much to the story. I mean, it was still an okay book. I can still safely say that I enjoyed it. Way shorter than all the other Stormlight books as well. All the Stormlight books are 1,300 pages, and this one was only 200 pages. But it was an okay book, just not the best book. The last and lowest book on this list is also a Brandon Sanderson book. It is The Frugal Wizard's Handbook to Surviving Medieval England. Again, I listened to the audiobook of this, which I would usually call cheating, but since I did it, it's not cheating. I had to listen to the audiobook because our library didn't have it, and I just didn't have the money to buy it at the time. But anyway, and I'm sure glad I didn't buy it, because I'm afraid to say this is probably my least favorite Brandon Sanderson book so far. And I wouldn't say it was terrible, but it wasn't good either. I wouldn't even say it was fine. It was bad. It wasn't terrible, though. So basically, there's this man who travels back in time to medieval England, and he doesn't remember a thing about who he was before he traveled to medieval England. His brain doesn't remember, so he doesn't remember his own name or who he was or anything, but his body can remember. So he's very athletic, he's a good fighter, and so he makes friends in medieval England, does some fighting, and tries to find out, who he is. And the characters I thought were boring. I just was not interested in any of them at all. I didn't really care about them. And when we did find out this guy's backstory, it was a below average tragic backstory. It was not good in my opinion. I'll give it a 6 or maybe even a 5 out of 10 because this is definitely my least favorite Brandon Sanderson book so far. I was not interested in any of the characters, and Brandon Sanderson gives classes on creative writing, and in his lectures he talks about this kind of stuff. He talks about how to make a compelling character, and I feel like in this book that's what he tried to do, but he didn't succeed. It feels like he tried to make a compelling character, but he couldn't. For some reason. I just thought the characters were boring. I wasn't interested in them. Very average story. I don't know. I would not recommend this book, I'm afraid to say. So that is my least favorite book that I read this month. Well, I don't really want to end this video on a tragic note like that, a bad note like that. So I want to do a little bit of an honorable mention here. I don't know how I would rank this book, but I would definitely recommend it. It was a book that I was made to do for school, and it's sort of more of like a, a workbook than like a book that you can read. But it is The Fallacy Detective by Nathaniel Bluedorn and Hans Bluedorn. And this teaches you logical thinking. So a fallacy is an error in logic, and it teaches you all these different fallacies in a very humorous way. So there's like a red herring, which is when someone brings up something irrelevant to the argument. And then there's a bunch of others. There's tu quoque, which is when someone, it's Latin for you too, and it's when someone accuses the other person of doing the same thing that they did, but it doesn't prove their argument at all. And I know that I've used this one a ton, and like, so has everyone else. And I definitely benefited from this book. It taught me logic, which I needed to be taught. I think everyone should do this book. Everyone these days should know logic, and I find so many fallacies everywhere now, like in my family, in ads, just everywhere. People are illogical, me included. I think a lot of people would benefit from this. Everyone would benefit from this, especially me. I would definitely recommend it. The Fallacy Detective teaches you logical thinking in a very humorous way. But some of these examples are just yikes. Like, listen to this one example here. Angry college student. What's wrong with killing people? We humans are just made of all the food we've eaten, digested and made into skin and bones. If I shoot you, I'm just rearranging a bunch of former hamburgers and french fries. Great snakes. So, The Fallacy Detective, logical book. Teaches you logic in a very humorous way. I definitely benefited from it. And I'm actually really glad I was made to do this for school, and it doesn't really feel like a school textbook either. It's like fun to do, so you have fun doing it, so you work ahead, because I was technically supposed to finish this in like April, but I worked ahead because it was such a fun book, and I definitely benefited from it. So I would definitely recommend it. I don't know how I would rank it, but I just want to recommend it. So there, that was a lot. That was all the books that I read in the past month. For April, I plan on reading the next volume in the History of Middle-earth series, finish up The Bronze Bow, and read Surprised by Joy, which is a book by C.S. Lewis that I've been wanting to read for quite a while, and read the Iliad, and if I have time, maybe also read the Odyssey, which I've had sitting on my shelf for a long time. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you did enjoy watching it, smash the like button, but don't smash it too hard. Smash it calmly, smash it lovingly, and please subscribe to my channel, as I do, anything related to books, such as book reviews. And I'm almost to 1,000 subscribers as well, which is kind of crazy. Thank you so much for watching this video. Farewell.